Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name is Joel Barnett and I am your host. And in today's episode, I'm talking with Josh Norman from Josh Norman Landscapes. So Josh runs a landscape design and construction company based in Melbourne and fascinating fellow to talk to. He's got a great story about how he started. His old man was a bricklayer, but he also did a lot of different things before starting his own business, so including starting his own business and then having a spell from that in a different state and then moving overseas to work for a couple of years and then coming back to Melbourne to start his own business. So he's got a different path that he took to what most people do, but it's good to I always think it's good to have those different experiences so you can learn so many different things. And one of those things he did was commercial paving as well and working out the processes of that. So yeah, I loved hearing how he started. And more than that, I loved how he started getting work when he did start the business. It's something that I would have done at the same time rather than and it was the same when I was looking for work, like when I was looking to be an employee, rather than just waiting to see what is available that you then apply for or waiting for customers to come to you. He was being proactive and contacting designers and other people to see if they needed any work done. And he got one of his first big projects from Mirror at Mud Office and then kept getting work from there and bigger jobs and then you market off those as well. So I loved how he was being proactive there. And when I'm talking to people that I want to know, I've got the Instagram clip that I usually do of a valuable bit of information that they've shared, and there was quite a few I could have used from this chat with Josh. So I absolutely loved having a chat with him. So hopefully you enjoy this chat with Josh Norman. Josh, thank you for joining us on the Landscaping Podcast. My first question for you is, how did you start in the industry?
Wow, that's a long time ago now. Was always sort of involved. My father was a bricklayer. Mother always had a garden, so always worked out in the gardens with her and looked after that sort of stuff. So even from a young age, she had me out there building things, and I was always on site catching bricks up on scaff or mixing mud for my old man. And pretty much, yeah, sort of finished high school. Like a lot of kids, did a lot of stuff probably shouldn't have, and then finally decided needed to move on and get a real job. So luckily I was able to get its leg up into landscaping and yeah, continued on from there.
So who did you start working with? Was it anyone who's still around now?
So I started working years ago in originally in Bendigo. So I'm from Custom Own.
Oh,
So started working with Bendigo Landscaping, Daryl Canny. His son now runs Bendigo Landscaping. Yeah, so we've sort of always worked with those guys. Back in the old days with the old AB blocks and the 400 by 400 concrete pavers down on sand and yeah, doing stuff like that. So yeah.
yeah, I remember when we started laying some of the 5x500 classic stones on a mortar base. I think all these people
Yeah.
are rich because they're using pavers on concrete.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
I know. I thought it was bizarre, like, because you can get so many more down, and it's not really a product for being laid on mud anyway. So, but yeah,
yeah,
it's bizarre.
yeah, those blocks are heavy too, but they use them a lot in North America still. That's they do a lot of retaining walls out of that.
Yeah, I find it actually it's one of my interests is always seeing what other people doing overseas. I really enjoy watching what the Americans are doing. I find it quite fascinating the way they do all their bases,
Mm.
and how there's no concrete or mortar in it. And it's obviously got to do with all the frost and that sort of thing. Same with the UK, the backwards way they sort of do things over there. It always fascinates me as well. I worked over there for a couple of years and it was, yeah, very different. Sometimes you look at it and you think, God, you could make life so much easier, but they're all
Mm.
set in their ways. So it's interesting to see the way everybody does things.
Yeah, I often think that about the way we do things as well. As a lot of overkill in the way we do things. Like you could do things a lot simpler, but
Yeah.
everyone just sort of does it this way because that's the way we do it.
Yeah, I agree. That's very true. I think the good thing about the way we do it, though, is that you get that longevity out of it. So, as a business owner, you don't want to be going back fixing things. So, even if, let's say, there's a trench underneath it that wasn't backfilled correctly or something like that, slab's going to span that in most cases. So, whereas if it's on sand or that flexible base, you're going to get that sinking. So, I think that's probably the main reason why people are so happy to do it that way now.
Yep. So did you do an apprenticeship with that company?
Yeah, oh, well, yes and no. So I sort of worked for them for about 4 years, didn't have an actual apprenticeship. After about 3 years, I decided that I actually needed my ticket. So I took myself to school up in Bendigo TAFE, and pretty much was given RPLs on all subjects. Ended up having to just do two. I think it was bricklaying randomly, and and chemicals. So yeah, so I was able to tick the bricklaying off pretty quickly, but yeah, the chemicals I had to go sit a few classes. So yeah,
That's crazy. Like of all the things that you don't get an RPL in, like my dad's a bricklayer and I've been working there since I was like probably 7.
yeah, yeah. I know. It's bizarre, isn't it? It's one of those things that I guess back in Benio in those days, we didn't lay many bricks because it was all those, that C&M sort of, or Adbri now, all their sort of blocks and things like that. That was the big thing back then. So
And what'd you do? How long you there for 4 years, did you say, with that crew?
yeah, about 4 or 5 years, something like that. So yeah.
And then where'd you go to after that?
Then we moved to Melbourne. Me and my wife moved down to Melbourne. I started working with a company that specialised in commercial paving. So basically went from laying no pavers on mud to basically laying thousands of them, thousands of square metres each job. So basically all we did was laid pavers. Like we laid like Swinburne Uni, all that undercover area in there, like massive amounts of paving on mortar. Most jobs were 2,000-3,000 square metres at a time. So I managed to learn how to lay them pretty quickly. So yeah, so I worked with those guys for probably nearly 2 years, I think it was, and then from there, then we did a lot of travel. So moved up to Darwin, lived in Darwin, landscaped in Darwin. 2 years up there, the heat nearly killed me in the end. I
Yeah.
had to leave. It was pretty hot. Then moved down to Perth, started a business of my own down in Perth. And then from Perth, we came back to Melbourne again for 6 months. And then we moved to the UK for 2 years and worked over there. So,
Yeah, right. They've been moving around.
yeah, so I've been very lucky, did a lot of travel. So, and then when we come back to Melbourne after that, I actually realised that, I wanted to start to work for some of the better guys. So then I started working with Robert Boyle, which was fantastic, amazing education working with him, just some of the jobs we did. And then Scotty Wind at TLC sort of ended up being construction manager for him for a while, for a year or two. So, yeah.
There you are. Now, when you were doing the commercial paving, you're saying you're laying it on mortar. So is it like you do now, where so the concrete slab and then you mix up the mortar and lay it individually?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Because I see a
Yeah.
lot of commercial paving now that they do. Someone put out like a sand and cement mix and then put a slurry over the top and then you tap them down.
Yeah, I've tried that once. We had a job at one of the big shopping centres, and yeah, it was funny. It comes in that like that mix in the truck, and then they literally, like, the concrete truck empties it, and then you've got this pile of stuff you've got to use that day, and you sort of squared it almost like a flexible sand base, and then yeah, you pour that on. I sort of struggled learning how to do that. I didn't do it very well. I found that, we had a bit of issues with things not sticking and things like that. So I was happy to go back to sticking with the old mortar on concrete.
So did you learn anything about the productivity of the way they do things that, like with laying pavers like that? Like, did you then relate that into your business when you started paving? Like,
Yeah, definitely. Like, it's that set out, the ability to know that, you can set up runs, so to speak, and basically you're just filling in gaps. Obviously, not every job's like that, but, yeah, there were a lot of things that we picked up, or I picked up, and I was able to implement into our sort of processes and that. So,
and when you were at TLC, did you go over to Chelsea?
no, that was only about 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago. So, yeah, Scotty, it was long before I was with him that he went over to Chelsea.
Oh, well, yeah, I suppose time does go pretty fast. Yeah, I suppose it was 10 years ago that I did a garden at the garden show just about. So yeah, it does go very fast.
It does, yeah.
But what was that like working there?
With Scott, yeah, it was great. Scott's a fantastic business owner. So, he runs a really good business. He really knows everything, like, construction based, and, just the really good business side of it. Learned a lot off him, in those sorts of aspects. It was great. Also, building pools, that sort of stuff. It was great to be involved in that as well. So yeah, it was a really good experience with Scott. I'm still friends with Scott to this day, and I still call him up and pick his brain on things, or ask him what he thinks of stuff. So yeah.
And how long were you over in Perth for?
Perth were about 9 months.
Yep.
So yeah, I just basically, that was back in the day where you could put an ad in a newspaper,
Yeah.
and then in no time at all, I was so busy that we were just like flat chat. And that's another weird place, Perth. They just have everything so sandy over there.
Yeah.
Like, there's no slabs. Like you're basically laying these massive limestone blocks on just sand beds. Like, it's bizarre and no drainage. Like just big holes dug in the ground with pits in them. And yeah, it's a great experience over there as well to learn lots of different ways of doing things.
Great digging too.
Yeah, fantastic. It's like being in the sandbar.
Yeah. And I wonder whether they sell crowbars over there.
I wouldn't think so. I remember the first day actually, which was pretty funny. We laid out this turf on this job. When I first got there, I started working with someone, but they rolled out all this turf and they said, "Okay, we're going to whack the turf now." And I was like, "What?" And they got out the whacker and we started running the whacker up and down the nature strip on the turf. It was pretty bizarre sort of thing.
Yeah, I had a guy I know. He said that he does that with his turf. I
Yeah,
didn't know if he was taking the piss or not, but I did it one time, but it didn't seem to do anything at all. But
yeah. Nah. It's funny over in the UK they do this weird way. So you roll out your turf and they just get big planks and you jump up and down on the plank and walk up and down the plank, then you roll it over and yeah, there's bizarre ways of doing things.
yeah, I've seen them laying turf and they're walking along the plank on the
Yeah,
grass, but they don't get onto the soil.
yeah, yeah. So one of my main guys that works with me, Tim, him and I worked together over in the UK. So like it's nearly 12, 13 years ago now. So Tim's been with me now in Melbourne on my business for about six or 7 years now. And yeah, we used to work together over there. Always installing this turf on these planks. It was pretty bizarre sort of thing. We still joke about it to this day.
Yeah, I've heard a lot. Yeah, some great stories about turf. There was, I think, don't know if it was one of my employees went to like someone at his trade school said that when their crew lays turf, they'll put a timber stake in one end and stretch the turf out to get it to go
Oh,
a bit
really?
further. So
Yeah.
you
Good
end
way
up
to save
getting
a
your
bit of
dollars
money.
worth. Yeah. And there's some
Yeah.
people who lay them by a string line, so it's a nice dead straight line when you
Yeah,
put
right.
it. Like, I suppose that could be one of those 1%ers that it looks nice when it goes in. Like, I want to do a turf job where I lay rows in different directions, so it looks like the lawns are striped when you first lay,
Yeah.
even though it's only temporary.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that'd look cool. I think the issue with turf though is that it's generally not very good. So you might start out with a straight line, but then some of them end up at 30, 40 mil shorter or narrower. It's pretty hit and miss at the moment with
yeah,
turf. So.
yeah. Whenever we order it locally, if they say that they haven't got any, so they're going to have to get in from Swan Hill, I always get
Yeah.
excited because it's so much better quality when it comes to
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, we had some the other day, buffalo, and it was obviously it's winter, so you can't expect much from buffalo at the moment. But it was one of those ones where it had sod on some of it, and then there was just
Yeah.
nothing but roots. And like the boys did their best to install it. I reckon we put like probably over a cube of sand on, like nearly 30, 40 square meters of turf, and it was still lumpy. It's it's just one of those things.
Yeah, it's probably something I should put in. It'd be good to put in quotes saying that no matter how flat you get your base, the turf's not going to be flat. So if you want it to
Yeah.
be flat, you need to top dress it later and blah 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 because you can get it perfect and then it just comes in like you say. Some's got soil on it, some hasn't. Some hasn't got any turf or soil in sections. Like it's
Yeah.
just all over the place.
Yeah. What we generally do is like when we're doing a handover and that sort of stuff, talking about those sorts of, maintenance things, that's always something we talk about, especially with the buffalo and, those summer grasses are always, the expectation that, once spring comes or summer, you'll need to do a, bit of maintenance on the lawn, cut it short and top dress it. And if you want to get it to that point, obviously your fescues and that are great. Like they're almost like, pool tables. So, but yeah.
Yeah, and you're old enough to know, like back in the day, that's all we used to lay.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly. It's we're pretty sport for choice now, really. There's some great turfs out there, but yeah, they work for all different things.
yeah, but none of them look as good as tall fescue when it's first laid.
No, nothing. It is high maintenance though, tall fescue. It's funny,
Yeah,
we did a design last year and one of our clients, she was adamant, like, oh, I don't know about turf. And I said, look, you're going to love it. Like, we'll put in this fescue. You'll be able to, look after it and, you'll really enjoy it. And anyway, the other day we went out and did a bit of a checkup and that. It's been in for about 18 months or so now. And her lawn, like she was saying how, like, it's so much work, but she's out there overseeding it all the time with the RTF seed. And this lawn looked amazing. And it was so impressed to see that someone who didn't want a lawn, like, has now embraced it and has got this amazing lawn. It's really good.
Yeah, it's one of those things you can actually keep it looking good. Like you can impress people with how amazing it looks, and people will say, "Oh, is that fake?" Which is like the ultimate compliment.
Yeah, definitely.
So you said you came back to Melbourne and then you started the business then, is that right?
No, I did. Well, I came back to Melbourne from the UK, and then I worked with Rob for probably nearly 3 years, and then with Scott, and then I started it after that. I decided when I had a 6-month-old baby that it was probably a good time to start a business. So that's what I did.
Yeah. I started the business the same year we built a house and got married. So
right.
Yeah, that's all happening. So it seems like a lot of people do that kind of thing. Well, they start a business at the same time, but
yeah, I think it's so sort of maybe it's a big life decisions, and you realise that I nearly didn't continue in the industry. I'd sort of was pretty burnt out with it all, and I loved the industry and couldn't imagine myself anywhere else. But I did contemplate becoming a chippy or a sparky. But the option was that either start a business or do something completely different. And to be honest, it's one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life.
I thought you were going to say you're so regretful. Yeah.
No, no, I love this industry. It's I think as landscapers, we're so lucky. Like, we get to build so many different things, like it's construction, but you get to finish things and and then they grow, which is the best thing. Like, most architects, they're wanting to take photos immediately of their houses once they're built because they know that's the best it's ever going to look. Whereas us, we're waiting 1-2 years because we want the garden to look better. So yeah, it's pretty lucky get to see those things grow. So
yeah, unfortunately, some of the jobs we do, that when we finish, it's the best it's ever going to look as well.
Yeah, we've got a few of those as well, which is very disappointing. You always go back and you're like, oh no, what's happened here? And it's I don't think people understand sometimes how much like maintenance is involved. Like, it's not that much, but you do have to invest that time into it to get it looking good.
Yeah, it's something that's involved. Like there's not no maintenance. It's not no maintenance. It's just minimal, but something needed.
Yeah, it's that thing of when people ask for no maintenance, and you're always like, "There's no such thing." It's we can concrete it all. That's no maintenance. But if you want a garden,
even then, weeds grow in concrete. They grow in gutters and roofs, and they'll grow anywhere. So you're going to need to do something.
Yeah, exactly.
So was it after working for other people that you got burnt out?
Yeah, I guess I was. It's just, you just feel like you sort of get trapped. You want more. I'd already been going to school, studying design and project management and stuff on the side whilst working for other people. So I was wanting something more than just the standard, running of jobs and just, doing that sort of thing. So I guess that's where I just sort of had enough, I suppose, of doing that. So, and the options weren't coming up. So it was that decision of just having to make it for myself.
And how did you come up with the name of the business?
Oh man, I went through so many different names. I sometimes, someone once told me you should never name a business after yourself, and I sort of agree. I'd love to be able to have a rebrand and a different name for the business, but yeah, not very imaginative, I suppose. So
I don't think it's a problem because like when people think of In-Style Gardens, I think of me. So even though it's not named after me, and I didn't even start the business, you end up being the business.
Yeah.
So, and it's not like it's extremely rare. Like it'd be less than 1% of businesses that get sold. In landscaping, and there's one I know of in Geelong that got sold. It was named after the owner. Like it was like Josh Norman Landscapes, but now it's just called JN Landscapes instead. So it can still happen.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like I've tossed around with the idea of like, just abbreviating, just JNL, and trying to simplify it a bit. Yeah, it's definitely not an egotistical thing. It was just a poor decision, like, or just not very an imaginative sort of idea. So.
Yeah. So how did you start getting the jobs to start with for yourself?
Well, being from that older generation, my whole thought process was you've got to knock on doors. If you want the work, you knock on the doors. So my first job was a family member job up in Bendigo. So that was, quite a big job, pool and full landscape. So that was the one that started us off, helped to get a bit of capital in the bank, and then started doing a few jobs with Scott, just subbing in, doing some paving and stuff for him. And then I was very lucky. I managed to speak to Mira from Mud Office one day, just randomly calling people, and she really gave me my big break, really. We were able to get a few jobs with her and started working with her and doing bigger jobs. And, it all happened quite quickly. Yeah, so we were very lucky there. And then it's just as it evolves, you start to work with people, they see the work that you do, and then people want to get involved with what you're doing, and so you sort of start to make new business friends, and that's how it all sort of rolls on.
And how did you go with employees? Did you put them on early on?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, so we basically started off as three of us to begin with. So yeah, I was very lucky. I had a guy called Dylan who started off the business with me. Well, not started off, but he started quite early on with me, him, and an apprentice. And then after a while, you get to the point where you sort of, you stretch too thin. So you then start to decide, well, I need somebody else to come on, and then it gets to the point where you've got like three guys plus yourself, and then then I actually had a bit of an accident. I stupidly had my foot on a piece of stone with a 9-inch grinder, and the stone caught and flicked off my shin and into my hand and severed my tendon in my hand. And I was out of work for 3 months, couldn't drive, couldn't use my hand, couldn't do any work. And that really, at that point there, that was a changing point. That was when I decided that I can't do this myself. So I then started to step back and started to run the business versus, being in the business. And that was a big change. And then from there, then I started looking, and we started, getting enough work that we're like, all right, let's do 2 teams. And, so we started running those 2 teams and been doing that for probably about, 7 years now.
So are you on the tools at all anymore?
No.
All right.
And
has
I
it been
don't have any time for that.
7 years?
Yeah, probably about for the last 5 years, probably.
All right.
So I used to still jump on them. I still get in there and we'll do some here and there, depending on what we're building. If it's something the boys need some help with or something complicated, we'll definitely get involved. But as far as it goes, like myself, I pretty much do all the quoting, project management, and design. So if I was on the tools as well as meetings, like you just literally don't have the time. It just sucks up your time too much.
I noticed, actually.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's correct. So had you done any business training or anything? Because I know you did the project management. Did that help at all in that?
Not really. No real business training. I just sort of fumbled along at the start, and then just sort of through the years, we've learned lots of different processes, seen a lot of different ways people run businesses, and just sort of took a lot from everybody, and just sort of, worked it out myself and did it that way. So.
And what do you like at keeping track of how much you spend on a job and seeing the profitability in each project? Do you do anything with that?
Yeah. So basically every project, so our bookkeeper, she enters all receipts. Everything is like we're paper free. We've been paper free for probably about 6 years now, I think. So all receipts are either photos or, uploaded into HubDoc or all that sort of thing. So they've all been allocated to a job. So at the end of each job, we get a profit and loss statement with labour, everything. And so the guys every week allocate what hours have been on what project, so we can fully see what we get out of each project.
And do you dial it down to roles on the project, like doing paving or concreting or anything like that?
Not really. It becomes too much. I feel you can sort of overdo it. I think at the end of the day, if the profit at the end is looking good, then it's okay. I always find that you'll win on some things and you'll always lose on others. I think, ultimately at the end of the day, all we want to try and achieve is a quality project. So sometimes we'll make decisions where, maybe something's not quite right or not up to scratch. So we'll make decisions to redo it. It's obviously not very often that that happens, but, or you might be short on papers. So you've got to buy more papers or, so I think that overall, you want to see how the project's gone overall. I think you can never run a project perfectly. There's always something, humans always make mistakes. So
Yeah, and it's an impossible, like when you're doing a design, it's impossible to know everything that you're going to come across with so many different elevations and measurements and different products. And there's so many different things that are going to change. So yeah, it's impossible to be perfect on a landscaping project.
yeah, it's something I strive for and I want so bad. But every single time at the end of a job, it's like all these things, and the boys are really great. Like, their attention to detail is so fantastic, and really lucky to have the whole team behind us. Like, but it's always one little thing, and it's just like, damn it, like why? Like, and it's only really minute thing. It's not like a big thing where it's like, unacceptable. It's like something you wouldn't even know unless
Yeah.
you've been involved. So yeah, it's just one of those things. We'll continue to strive for it, and maybe one day.
And what sort of meetings that you have? So have you got two leaders who are like running the two different teams, and do you catch up with them? How often do you catch up with them?
So basically, we sort of run with two job leaders, and we're starting to try and push into a sort of one of the guys, Tim, that I was mentioning before, for him to be more of a construction manager. So the idea is that he'll end up being more of a manager of the two job leaders, so freeing myself up a little bit more. That'll sort of hopefully then, we obviously have apprentices as well. So the apprentices, go to school. So he'll jump in on sites when they're at school. And then so he'll know the sites quite intimately. So yeah, that's sort of the way we're moving forward at the moment. I'm pretty heavily involved. Like I'm definitely not a micromanager. Like I stopped that a long time ago. I realized that you've got to let people do their job. But I talk to guys like every day, and I'll come out on site like, at least a couple of times a week. But I know exactly what's going on, and I know any problems that are occurring. So yeah, we try and stay on top of everything.
And how big are the two teams that you got?
So we've run about 7 guys. So I've found that seven's the perfect amount. Eight's too many. It's odd, and six isn't enough. So because there's always an apprentice at school.
Yeah.
So 3 guys on site is perfect. You have one bloke in charge. You have the second 2IC and an apprentice, and then it frees up the bloke in charge to be able to manage stuff and pre-plan that sort of stuff, and then your apprentice can work alongside your other tradesmen, working on other items within the build. So yeah, obviously the job leader still jumps in, and they work together as a team. And then on our big jobs, a lot of the time we'll always, obviously we do lots of different size jobs, courtyards through to, we're doing a massive one at the moment. We've had 8 guys on that job. That's how big it is. So that is sort of, we sort of will put 4 guys on one job sometimes if they're bigger. So
Yep. So when you were doing that big one, did you freak out when you saw the dollar amount in there?
yeah, I freak out. Been freaking out on it for ages now. We're at the point now where the boys have absolutely smashed it, and having like lots of the teams on there was a really good decision to do that, because we've finished a lot of the hardscape now. So it feels like we've actually broken its back, so to speak. So I'm really excited about it. It's a magic property, 5 acres in Viewbank, looking over nothing but sort of paddocks. So it's going to be a fantastic project once it's completed. So yeah, very scared at the beginning, but really excited at this point. So
Who designed that one?
that was one of mine.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. So what do you use for your designs?
So just AutoCAD.
Yep.
Yeah, so basically start off with pen and paper, obviously, and then just move on to that. Just to put everything into CAD and go from there.
So what percentage of the jobs that you do would you design compared to doing for other designers?
At the moment, I think we'd probably be around 50 to 60% would be our builds, which is really good. So yeah, it's quite exciting. Yeah.
And has that changed in the last 2 years or anything? Or like, is it moving more towards your own rather than?
Yeah, definitely. Like, obviously, as you as a business, as you grow, as people start to see your designs, start to see that sort of stuff happen, you start to get more inquiries. Then you start to build more, obviously, of your own design. So, it's sort of yeah, it slowly progresses and gets better and or bigger as far as design goes.
Have you ever been tempted to put on more than the amount of staff you got now? Like, no, no,
No way.
eight,
Like
eight
I
people.
have, and when I first started, I had that drive and I wanted it so bad. But at this point in time, I want balance. So, I'm very lucky to have a quite a successful business with fantastic staff. So for me, my main thing is I want to spend time with my family. I want to be able to enjoy the work we do, and I don't want to burn out. I want to enjoy this experience. So yeah,
Yeah, and you don't work weekends, I assume.
no.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. So really try to contain all that work life, during the week. Because back in the day, I used to do a lot of work. Like, I'd be doing 80-hour weeks. Every night I'd be like, kids would go to bed, or my wife would put the kids to bed, and then I'd be out in the office and I'd sit in the office for another 3 hours. And I'd work a Saturday. And it got to the point where I was like, this is, it's not sustainable and it's not a very enjoyable sort of thing. I don't want to be sitting down in an office of a weeknight working until like 9:30, 10. So it sort of as things started to change, the business grew. We bought a factory, moved into the factory, set up just a computer in the factory, in the office, so that it's just there and that's it. And obviously we've got access to it, via the cloud, but yeah, it's just try and keep that all in that workplace rather than taking it home, so I can be present with our, the kids and wife and stuff.
Yep. And with like 'cause you do a fair few larger projects, so how do you go like having multiple ones on at once or not having multiple ones and then something goes wrong on one, you've got nowhere to go for the guys.
So that's always a hard one. You always want to have those little ones in your back pocket because, there's so many people involved in our projects. Like, you've got builders, you've got pool builders, and then ourselves, so sometimes things don't always line up. So you always need to have something there that that you can say bring forward and put into that spot. That's sort of, yeah, like you always need to feel like you've got too much work, because if you've got too much work, then you will know that that's always going to fill an empty spot. But ultimately it comes down to, you've just got to be so organized. So, you've got to have everything organized. So like project manager, you've got to be talking to pool builders like 8 weeks before you're starting on a project to make sure that pool's in. Or, you've got to be on the front foot the whole time. The minute you step off that gas, it's going to fall apart immediately. So you just have to always be pushing first.
And do you get many subbies in to do stuff, or do you do most of it yourself?
No, we pretty much do it all. So we used to do a lot of architectural concrete. We used to get the subbies in, but it's honestly, it's not that hard. So we just do it ourselves. The only things we do subby out a lot of the time will be block work or big exposed ag driveways and stuff. It's more that the guys who lay blocks and that sort of stuff, they do it for a living, so they're quicker. So there's no point paying my boys to lay 50 blocks a day when a block layer can come in and lay like 200. So it's all about just keeping the project moving and keep you guys doing what they enjoy doing and doing it that way. So
Have you seen those Versalock blocks?
yeah, we've used them before. Don't get caught out on the spacings of the starter bars. That's one tip. Because
What?
it's not the standard 100 million from the end and 400 from there. It's sort of like this weird sort of the
All right.
setup. Yeah, we got stuck once on that.
Well, that's good to know. Yeah,
Yeah,
we did one big wall out of it, but it was just like a front fence, and then
yeah,
it got clad in stone, so it wasn't retaining anything. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you wouldn't even need to fill it really. But yeah, they just go up so quick.
Yeah, they do. They do. We did years ago we did a project on Dream Gardens up in Kyneton, and we built all these walls. It was Kate Monk designed it. It used to be Chimera Studio. She's no longer designing anymore, but yeah, they had all these walls and stuff in there, and we did it out of the Versalock, and it was funny that they were there. That was when we mucked up on the starter bars, and what's his name? Who's the Dream Guns? What's it? Michael
Michael.
McCoy was there talking to us about the blocks, and like all the starter bars were lining up and they're filming, and we're like, going, oh, this is so embarrassing. So it was a bit of a quick change with some Chemset and
I thought you were saying that if they're 400s, that's not the right spacings, but you're talking about where yeah, I've had that exact same thing. So the blocks doesn't line up. Yeah, yeah, the
yeah,
exact same thing. So some
yeah.
bend across, but some we had to take out and re-put in.
Yeah, the worst thing was it was like they were filming us. So it's like the full film crew's there and we're like, going, oh, what have we done? Like, but you're so used to working with standard blocks,
Yeah.
that you forget these things. And yeah, but those walls went up really quickly and, they're still solid to this day. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome when you find a new product like that, that just you think, oh, why don't other people use this?
Yeah, yeah. I was when I was really young, my father, so he ended up working for C&M Bricks, so Adbri years ago. When I first left school, I actually wrapped pallets. That was one of my jobs in the brickyard. So we used to see, it was funny, I used to wrap these pallets and then later on, like a few years down the track, I was just laying them constantly. And so he always knew these products when they were coming out. Like, so, I'd seen it and I'd worked with him on some stuff. And so yeah, that's why we sort of saw it and got involved with it years ago. But now we just use standard blocks. But yeah.
Yep. And have you got a type of favorite stone you like putting in your projects, like a paving stone?
Yeah, look, I really like limestone.
Mm.
Probably, we do a lot of work with better exteriors. Probably one of my favorites of theirs would be the Claremont at the moment. It's just that soft grey. Lots of people are using it, obviously. The interesting thing about it is when it's laid, it's got this sort of mottling and it's like this softness to it. It's like there'll be lots of color variation. It's not just one color. It's soft to cut, easy to work with. You've got those rounded edges. It's just a great stone.
I just want to look up what that is. Is it the same as Eco's Garon?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because we're using that at the moment, I absolutely love it, and the way you're
Yeah.
describing it, it sounded exactly the same. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's
One of those things.
stunning.
It looks so flat, so to
Yeah,
speak, when you're laying it and grouting it and doing all that, and it's so flat and it's just this grey. But then once you come in and that's been cleaned and sealed, it just comes alive, and yeah, it's really great.
yeah,
So
it's got the tumbled edges as well.
yeah, nothing beats tumbled edges.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to use the like better exteriors call it that Alba Crazy Pave. I was going to use that
Yeah.
at my place.
Yep.
But we've used it a fair bit, and it's just it's because it's a slate, it's really uneven. There's little high
Yeah.
bits and bits everywhere, and you get water pooling no matter how much fall you have on it. So I
Yeah.
moved away from wanting to do that, and now I'm going to use the Garon instead.
Yeah, so we've done a few projects with that with the Claremont or Grom, whatever you want to call it, whoever's supplying it,
Yeah.
in the Crazy Pave, and it is fantastic. It is
Oh, you
so
get a Crazy
nice.
Pave as well, can you?
Yeah. And you get lots of really nice big pieces, and yeah, we used
Yeah,
to do a lot of
nice.
the Alba as well, and similar. It's just so rough. But
Yeah,
if that's the look you're going for, then that's fine.
yeah, because I love the colors of it, but
Yeah, so
yeah,
those soft greys.
yeah.
I really. Oh, look, I'll lay it, but I'm not a fan of bluestone. I know that's probably sacrilege from Victoria, but the Bamstone stuff's interesting. That's nice, but the just that Chinese stuff, like we'll lay it, but it's never flat. You know what I mean? It's always twisted, or there's always something wrong with it. So I'm not a big fan of that.
It's copying a bit lately, old Bluestone. I don't know if Tyson was still on the episode, but Chris Weiss from the when he was on the Front Garden podcast. He was
Yeah,
talking to Paul Pritchard actually, and they were canning using bluestone around
yeah.
pools, I think, because of the heat. But
Oh yeah, it's such a terrible stone around pools. As everybody, or as people would probably remember who've been in the industry a while, we had that stage where that bluestone was rusting so badly, around pools, and it's really something that as a business owner you don't want that, that liability, so to speak, of something that could happen. And as most suppliers of natural products, if it happens, they just, it's a natural product. We can't do
yeah,
anything about it. And that to me is, I don't really think that's a good enough excuse, but that makes me lean away from those products
yeah.
if there's a chance of something going wrong.
Do you use any concrete like Anston?
I have in the past, yeah, on some projects. Yeah, it's sort of. not a big fan of it. I think it's overpriced for it's just concrete paver. The chip's easy. I'm not ragging on them. I think that's a fantastic product. Anson do a great product, but I think it's probably due to my how much concrete pavers we used to lay back in my younger days. It's not really something I see as an option, which really I probably should, but yeah, I sort of don't see it that way.
Yeah, it's funny. The concrete pavers used to be cheap and the natural stone was expensive, and now it's gone the other way around.
Yeah, I know, it's bizarre. You can get stone from like Egypt cheaper than you can it's going to take you 6 months, but it'll be cheaper than buying like some concrete pavers. So
From Melbourne.
yeah, because it's a labor cost. So
Yeah. Yeah, I've been out to the Anson factory and it's insane how much manual labor is involved with what they do. Like they're
yeah,
literally shoveling the mix into the molds to make every single paver.
yeah. Well, when I worked at Adbri or C&M in Bendigo, that was, it was a working factory. So,
Yeah.
they used to have the motors that would, rattle it in and stuff like that. But there was always those wet cast pavers, like you were saying before, so they started to happen. And, so sort of got to see a lot of that manufacturing backside. Yeah, it's interesting.
Mm. Yeah, talking about pavers not being flat, those old concrete pavers, the big dome.
Yeah. They used to lay them. Remember, you used to lay them down on sand, and like your fingertips would disappear. Like
Yeah.
yeah,
So rough, yeah. Good
100
memories.
meters a day or something.
Yeah. There was some, yeah, it was weird, some of those pavers, but we had a bad experience with Classic Stone because they were getting really busy. So they got a new grabber machine, so that because they'd have a machine that would load the pavers onto pallets.
Yep.
And one of them they didn't calibrate it properly. And we had 13 pallets of it, and 9 of the pallets got sent back because they had chipped corners. So we had to go through and sort which ones were chipped and which ones weren't. So
yeah,
that
and
was
that's the thing that that as a business owner, you wear that cost. Like
I was lucky I
they're
was an
gonna
employee at the time.
yeah, but that's what you know what I mean. Like
Yeah.
they'll send some more product out, but
Yeah.
nobody covers you for that like potential day or 2 day of guys going through probably 13 pallets, probably more, 3 days of going through that stuff, and then you lose all that profit immediately just because of a supplier that hasn't done the job correctly. Which
Yeah.
obviously accidents happen, but
Yeah. And you've got no fingertips left at the end of it as well.
yeah. Yeah.
So you're happy with your current business size. So do you have any plans to do anything different in the future with the business?
Not really. No, we've toyed with the idea of doing maintenance. That just sounds like so much work. Like you think about it, like if you've got a good client, you might go to that garden once a month or once every 2 weeks, potentially, spending like 3 hours or 4 hours there. Like if you think about having 2 guys working full-time maintenance, you need a lot of projects. So, that to me was not something of any interest. There's guys out there that do it and do it well. And so, they might as well just keep doing that.
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to, continue with design work. Sometimes I feel like I've got too much, but then other times, you think, well, I've got enough for myself. So it's that hard thing of like, how hard do you push it and to get more design work? But then at the end of the day, we want to build the gardens. So there's no point pumping out 50 designs a year because we can't build them all. Like we build like maybe max sort of like, 10 gardens, maybe 12, if that, a year. So, for us, we only need, to get across like a few designs to build for ourselves. So, yeah. But as far as that, like we've got I've said a few times, like a really happy bunch of guys. Everybody's really passionate. We're not too stretched. Everybody just does a good job. And, so to me, I don't really want to change what we're doing. Obviously, things will evolve, but yeah, at the moment, not really.
And have you got a maintenance crew who you recommend for your jobs after you finished?
We used to use a couple. Used to use Ashley James,
His
but
quality was no good, so you stopped, I assume.
yeah, that's right. He was too much of a pain. He's too busy doing his hair and stuff like that. All his photo shoots. Funny. I told him I'd have a rib at him at some point.
Oh, yeah. I was going to ask next anyway if you did mention.
Yeah. So use those guys. We used to use Pat, Urban Horticulture Solutions. He sort of shrunk a bit in size as well. there's some really good ones out there. I know Gardens by Former looking after a couple of our gardens that we built for Bethany, which is great. They do a great job. Yeah, so there's a few guys out there that we'd like to be able to try and recommend, but a lot of clients say, they will look after their own garden. So, we've got some great clients that have looked after them really well lately, really passionate about it. So it's great.
And do you have any particular handover package that you do at the end of each project?
Yeah, we made a folder that, goes through, gives some simple sort of maintenance advice, tips on lawns, a list of supplies, that sort of stuff. It's just it's a fillable sort of PDF that we created. So we generally try and send that out. Otherwise, we just do an actual walkthrough handover, spend about an hour going through it. There's not much to a landscape handover, really. Sometimes you think like there should be more, but there's actually not much to it. The big thing is trying to teach people how to use a irrigation controller, really, and trying to make sure that they understand the difference between run times and start times. That's probably the big one. So
It's teach some employees that as well.
yeah, I know. And to turn on it was funny. We did a handover yesterday, and so many times you do a handover and you're explaining the irrigation, and you got to show. And this is where the bypass button for the rain sensor is, and it's always off. And you're like, yeah, so that should be on.
Or why is the same lawn one coming on 3 times a day? Oh,
Yeah,
they've done they've gone program B and C as well.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then it's always because it'll start once and then it'll run, and then they set another start time. And then next thing you know, it starts again. And it's like, yeah. So they think number two's, another start time, like station two, but it's actually second start time. So
Sometimes I'll get to a controller and just say, I'll just start it again. I'll just completely restart because I've got no idea what they've done here. It's just too confusing.
Yeah, yeah.
Last question for you, Josh, is who do you think would be a good guest to have on the podcast?
I think he got mentioned last time, but I don't know if he went on, did he? Scotty Wind. Did he?
No, I sent a message because when I had Darren on from Mint, because I think they got the same marketing person who looks after their Instagram.
Yeah, well, they're sort of connected.
Yeah.
TLC obviously used to be design as well, and now it's Mint, and yeah.
But she got Darren on, but then didn't get back to me when I asked Scott, so I'll send her another message.
Yeah, right. Who else? Have you spoken to Jaden from Greener Visions?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
I love. Yeah. I love having landscapers on, so they're some of my favorite chats. So yeah, that was an awesome one.
Yeah. Who else could I think? If it look like someone just starting out in their business, could be Max Alcorn from or what's his business called? Green Designs or something like LDC. I can't remember. I can Max Alcorn. We used to work together. He was an apprentice of mine years ago when we worked together at Robert Boyle's. So he's just starting out doing design work, and he's building some really nice stuff. Yeah, but he's just sort of just starting out in the last few years. So
yeah, because that'd be good to talk to someone who has started out these days rather than when you advertise the yellow pages. Like when I did.
Yeah, I know. Things were easier back then, I think. You didn't have to stress about having to post something on Instagram.
Yeah. I would say, how do you get work? I just put my ad in the yellow pages. Oh, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. That's why you put the 3 A's at the front of your name.
Yeah. It's not as relevant so much anymore.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. Well, can't thank you enough for coming on, Josh. I absolutely loved having this chat. So thank you very much for coming on and taking the time.
Yeah, appreciate it, Joel. Really, enjoyed it. Thanks, mate.